The night I decided to file for a second adoption, I was sitting on the cold linoleum of our kitchen in Riverbend, Missouri, counting coins into a jelly jar labeled emergency, while the oven ticked its slow, metallic heartbeat. The smoke detector above the stove had a personality, shrill at random. Nico was at the table coloring a map of the solar system for 3rd grade, tongue between his teeth, the purple crayon working Saturn's rings like he meant to land there. The radiator hissed and clanked like a stubborn uncle. Outside, a train threaded the dark with a lonely horn, then silence, then the rustle of wind along the bare sycamores that guarded our street. "Mom?" Nico didn't look up. "Can we keep our Friday pancakes if we get another kid?" "Friday pancakes are constitutional law," I said, and pushed 2 quarters into the jar. "Amendment 1, pancakes stand." He grinned. "With bananas?" "If the bananas are on sale." I scraped the jar's rim with a dime. We were down to rice, beans, 2 bruised apples, and faith. Rent was $145. I made $16.25 an hour at the hospital cafeteria. Mostly day shifts, but they slid around like loose floorboards. 6 a.m. openers after 9 p.m. closers, the kind of schedule that makes your bones feel borrowed. My bus pass was $52 a month. Daycare's after-school program ran me $185, though Mrs. Landry sometimes let late fees slide if I called. The math worked like this. If the bus broke down and I Ubered twice in a week, groceries shifted to beans and hope. If I took overtime, I missed bedtime, which meant sleepy Nico, which meant mornings beginning in tears, which meant both of us late, which meant fees. Some days, motherhood felt like juggling glassware over a tile floor while someone kept turning out the lights. I met her the same week our toaster died. They called her Lark at the shelter. A temporary name, they said, like a coat someone else would eventually wear. She was 6, all elbows and watchful eyes, the kind kids get when adults have rearranged the furniture of their lives too many times. She loved the corner window that bleeds afternoon honey into the shelter's playroom and sat under it with a box of wooden animals, lining them up, then breaking the line and starting over, like faith in practice. When I sat beside her, she offered me a small wooden fox. "Yours," she said, "if you promise to keep it safe." We played foxes, then tigers. Then we built a zoo where the animals were allowed to roam. She asked if my house had a window like this. I said it had one that stacked up sunsets, and she nodded like we had agreed on something important. When I stood to leave, she pocketed the fox with the solemnity of a guard tucking away a key. I have never believed that love is a lightning bolt. For me, it is a stubborn plant in a cracked cup on a windowsill, watered with what you have. Love is the bus you run after. Love is the pots you scrub without complaint because a small boy in dinosaur pajamas is asleep down the hall. But that night, when I lay in bed and listened to the downstairs neighbor clatter dishes and Nico murmuring in his dream, the word that settled on my chest was not love. It was yes. The next morning, I told the caseworker I wanted to be considered for Lark. "You already adopted once," she said, gently skeptical. "You're doing great with Nico. Are you sure you can carry? 2 kids can share a room," I said. "We've got bunk bed dreams." I didn't say. "We have an extra toothbrush wrapped in napkins behind the mirror. We have a spare cup. We can stretch spaghetti." I didn't say, "I am tired of the empty chair at our table, tired of the feeling that I'm waiting for my life to catch up to me." I didn't say, "Yes, feels like air." "Single parents are risky," a man at the shelter desk murmured later, not unkindly, just like someone repeating a memo. The line stung, lodged under my skin the way rust does when you scrape a fence. Risky. As if anyone was safe, as if love had ever been a spreadsheet. I went home, set 2 plates for Friday pancakes, and wrote, "Lark," on a sticky note I stuck to the fridge with a ladybug magnet. The question mark looked like a hook. Days lengthened like wet laundry. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart sprinted. At work, I burned my hand on a pan and laughed, and then cried in the walk-in cooler where the lettuce smells like pennies, and the air clutches your lungs, and Jada from the grill line held my elbow. "Breathe," she said. "Text me next time. If I can't, I'll find help." When the call finally came, "We'd like to place Lark with you pending the home visit," I sat on the steps of our building in my scrub pants, while a neighbor's dog nosed my knee and said, "Yes," to the sky. The sky said nothing back, but the wind shifted, the air tasting like rain. And then the caseworker added, "There's something else we found." She was left with a locket. We traced it to a boutique in St. Louis. It might be nothing, but the sentence hung there, daring me not to grab it. Nothing. or something that might change everything. Which would it be? Riverbend leans against the Missouri River like it needs the water to hold it upright. Old brick mills have been dressed up with twinkle lights and coffee shops. In the morning, the river freckles itself with sunlight. In the evening, it swallows the sky's leftover pinks. Our street is a run of fourplexes, 2 maples that go saffron in October, and a landlord who forgets to salt the stairs. The bus stop is a metal bench that keeps your secrets and your seat warm only if the sun is generous. My world was a map of reliable corners. The hospital cafeteria, where breakfast rush means clatter and steam, and the beep-beep of a timer that is always bossy. The elementary school with the blue doors, 2 blocks south, where a mural of foxes and owls runs the length of the hallway. The grocery store where the cashier with the eyebrow ring will quietly take an item off your bill if she sees you doing math with your breath. The shelter had begun as a distant building I passed on the bus and had become a place where names gathered. Ms. Patel, the school social worker, who wore bright scarves and never hurried hurt feelings. Mr. Green, our upstairs neighbor, retired carpenter, who fixed chair legs in his kitchen while humming low, like bees. Jada from the grill line, who knew every shortcut and the exact minute the day turned to evening by the way the steam rose from the griddle. When I tell you I was a single mom in difficulty, I mean I was a person who measured milk like it was fuel, because it was. I mean every car ride got translated into minutes of after-school care, every after-school minute into dollars, and every dollar into hours in shoes that made the bones across my toes feel like a brace. I mean I had a plan for what to do when the washing machine in the basement swallowed my quarters. Bang the lid twice, then coax it. And a plan for what to say when the teacher asked for the field trip fee, and I needed 2 days. Say, by Friday, and mean it. I mean I kept 2 resumes saved on my phone. One honest, one hopeful. The home visit for Lark came on a Tuesday. I scrubbed like the smell of lemon would testify to my worth. I borrowed a vacuum from Mr. Green. Nico helped tuck his Pokemon cards under the bed and made a sign that said, "Welcome home, Lark," in 5 colors. When the caseworker arrived, she checked outlets and windows and whether knives were out of reach. She asked about my schedule. I showed her the calendar, highlighter blocks for shifts, blue dots for late buses, stars for paydays, a tiny pancake drawn on Fridays. I told her about the 2 times I'd missed pickup and how Mrs. Landry had still greeted me with the same voice she uses for everyone, a miracle. I told her about Jada and Ms. Patel and Mr. Green, my scaffolding. The caseworker paused by the fridge, eyeing the sticky note. "The question mark?" she asked, half smiling. "Faith," I said. She nodded like she believed me, or at least she didn't mark it against me. They placed Lark with us on a Friday, because something in the universe loves a theme. She arrived with a canvas tote, 1 dress that fit, 2 that didn't, 3 mismatched socks, a stuffed rabbit with the stuffing departing, and the locket on a ribbon, because the chain had kinked and broke. She held the tote like someone guarding the last egg. We stood in the doorway, the hallway smelling like someone's soup and someone else's shampoo, and I said, "Hi, I'm Rowan. This is Nico." She looked at Nico, then me, then the sign he'd made. She lifted her chin like she was trying on brave. "I like the colors," she said. I hung the locket from a small hook by the door, with our keys. The first night, she slept with the rabbit tucked under her chin and the blue glow of the nightlight making her look like a small sea creature in a safe tide pool. Nico whispered from the top bunk, "Is she okay?" And I whispered back, "We'll make it okay," and believed it for 1 breath, then worried if I had overpromised. In the morning, she padded into the kitchen and asked, "Pancakes are today?" And I felt religion pump in my veins. We added things, small and specific. A second toothbrush in the cup, a second hook by the door for a jacket, a second lunchbox. On clearance, foxes on it, because of course. School paperwork multiplied like mushrooms. We practiced our route, blue doors, then right to Ms. Patel's office if the belly got tight with worry. After school, we found the playground rule of 3. 3 mamas who will text each other if the bus is late. 3 kids who will show a new kid where the good sticks are. We met Mrs. Laird from next door, who makes tamales for the building every December, and who said, "You say the time? I keep the kids when you're stuck," like she was pointing out her couch. The locket was small, oval, a flower carved on it, ivory-colored enamel cracked like old paint. Inside there was a paper fragment with 2 letters and a hyphen, E.M., and what might have been the top of a date. It's probably nothing, the caseworker had warned, but I pressed it between my fingers like a pulse. When Lark saw me looking, she said, "I kept it safe for a long time," in the voice children use when they have carried more than their share. I said, "You did good," and put it back on its hook. At the shelter, someone had called me risky. At school, in a hallway that smelled like pencil shavings and cafeteria pizza, Ms. Patel looked me in the eyes and said, "You are steady." I tried to believe her more than him. If you're watching this, tell me where you're listening from. Drop your city and one resource that helped you this month. And if stories like this matter to you, subscribe so we can find each other faster. I am not a miracle story. I am a woman with a bus pass, 2 kids who like pancakes, and a locket on a hook by the door that might be nothing, or might be the start of a line I never knew we were standing in. If it is a line, what is it for? We learned each other's weather. Lark didn't like sudden noises. The blender was an avalanche. Nico needed 5-minute warnings before transitions. I wrote schedules the way some people write poems. Block capitals, gentle arrows. Sunday nights became reset. Batch cooking rice and chicken thighs, labeling folders, lining up shoes by the rug. The kitchen smelled like cumin and soap. We made a game out of it. Every task earned a sticker, and 5 stickers meant you got to choose the bedtime story. One night, Nico picked a book about whales and fell asleep face down on the page, swimming in his dreams. Money was math with feelings. Groceries, $78.41, if we hit the store with the bananas at 39c whole a pound. Utilities, $118 last month, thanks to the radiator's moods. I made a rule. No food goes in the trash. Leftovers became quesadillas. Apples became crisps. Carrots bravely became soup. When the bus ran late in sleet, I could feel $1.85 of after-school time evaporate with every cold minute. When my supervisor asked if I could pick up a double on the day Ms. Patel had scheduled Lark's counseling intake, I shook my head and saw the look that says, unreliable. Policy is policy, he said. We need coverage. I wanted to say, children are children. Instead, I said, I can trade for Tuesday. He sighed like I was asking for a parade. Then the car I didn't yet own broke down. The bus stalled at the depot twice in 2 weeks. The second time, I grabbed an Uber because Mrs. Landry had called to say, we're good till 5:45, then there's a $1 a minute late fee. That ride cost $18.27, a week of bananas. Lark gripped my hand so tight at pickup her knuckles went white. I thought you forgot me, she whispered. I don't forget you, I said, and held her tight enough to steady the both of us. We built small victories. Lark learned to pour pancake batter from the measuring cup without a flood. Nico taught her how to fold fitted sheets, a family magic trick. They designed a zoo out of cereal boxes, each animal with a backstory. The apartment started to sound like we had always been 3. Bursts of laughter, doors sighing open and closed, the bathroom faucet scolding when left on too long. At night, after dishes, I sat with the locket and a flashlight, trying to coax meaning out of that fragment. EM, and the ghost of a date. The boutique in St. Louis the caseworker mentioned became a tab on my phone. I wrote an email, polite and brief, describing the locket and asking if they had any records of custom work with floral enamel, circa 6 or 7 years ago. I did not say, this might be my daughter's only breadcrumb. The boutique replied with grace and an invitation. We remember a limited run commissioned by a client with the initials EM in 2018. Privacy laws prevent us from sharing client data, but if a legal guardian of the child can contact our attorney, we will see what is possible. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Attorney, client. It felt like stepping into a room where the furniture was expensive and the air was colder. Ms. Patel recommended a legal clinic 2 bus lines away. I took a half day, filled out forms that asked things like household size and monthly income after taxes and do you have reliable childcare? As if boxes could hold the spill of a day. The lawyer they assigned, a woman with kind eyes and a coffee mug chipped at the rim, read the boutique's email and nodded. We can send a letter, she said. Sometimes that's all it takes to open a door. I thought about all the doors that had been shut in Lark's face, the ones that weren't doors so much as moving targets. And if it doesn't? I asked. She shrugged. Then we try another door. At the grocery store, the math ran hot. We were in the return line because the register ate my EBT card and then spit it back out like it had changed its mind. I balanced the carton of eggs and smiled at Lark and Nico like everything was a game. The woman in front of us turned and said, My niece was fostered. She says you always have a bag ready. I nodded, because my bag had 2 granola bars, a spare pair of socks, and the emergency $5 I pretended I didn't know about. The cashier with the eyebrow ring pretended not to hear when I took the bread off the belt. "We'll be okay without it," I told the kids. Nico said, "We have rice," like a soldier naming his rations. Lark touched my sleeve and whispered, "We can have pancakes and call it fancy." I put the bread back. We had pancakes with apples sliced thin and arranged like a fan. Fancy indeed. Then came the court hallway. Not because of custody. Lark's case was straightforward in that there were no safe relatives on record, but because of the locket. The boutique's attorney had written back with a name, a foundation in St. Louis that managed the philanthropic and personal affairs of a certain family, EM among them. They requested proof that I was Lark's legal guardian. The clinic lawyer helped me gather papers, notarized and stamped, and then asked a question I hadn't known to fear. "Are you prepared for media attention if this connects to who I think it might?" Media attention? My voice cracked on the first word. The clinic's waiting room smelled like printer ink and microwave noodles. Kids' drawings, a sun that looked like a sunflower with teeth, brightened the wall. I'm not. We just want to know her story." "Understood," the lawyer said. "But sometimes stories open floodgates. It is possible that EM stands for Emerson Monroe." "The tech guy?" Jada asked when I told her later, eyes wide. "The one who built that payments app and then sold it for way too much?" "I don't know," I said. The name felt like something I should whisper into a scarf. I Googled late into the night, learning about a man who wore crisp shirts and never quite smiled, who had set up a foundation after his sister died, who funded pediatric clinics and literacy programs, who never married. His parents were gone, his sister gone, his estate, a labyrinth of trusts and boards, and a rumor, a child somewhere, placed quietly. My stomach knotted in a way that felt like hunger and fear braided. Complications came like rain that can't decide if it wants to be snow. The foundation contacted us. The letter was polite and precise, requesting DNA testing through their chosen lab to determine if our decedent's estate has heirs of lineal descent. I counted the words that felt like ice. Decedent, estate, heirs. There was a stipend for travel, a list of protocols that made my head ache. The clinic lawyer helped me draft a response. We would cooperate, but all communications were to go through counsel. All records were to protect Lark's privacy. School, address, routines, off limits. We scheduled the swab at a clinic that smelled of antiseptic and lemon gum. Lark sat on my lap, and I told her it was like brushing a cheek with a tiny feather. She held still. "Will this make me different?" she asked. "You are you," I said. "You stay you." She tucked her chin like she was keeping her face safe. The foundation's liaison called in a voice that sounded trained for calm. "The preliminary results suggest a high probability," she said. "We will need a second confirmatory test." Ms. Patel printed the email for my file and then put a hand on mine. "Steady," she said. I held on. By then, the rumor had become a leak. A local blogger ran with a headline, "Is Riverbend's newest foster child secret tech heir?" The photograph they used, snapped outside the clinic, long lens, made my skin go cold. Me bending to tie Lark's shoe, Nico clutching my coat, the locket a pale bead at her throat. The comments were a bonfire. Gold digger, lottery mom. She saw a ticket and grabbed it. I wanted to answer each of them with our grocery receipts. I wanted to hold the internet up to my life and say, "Do you see? The rent is the rent. The bus is late in sleet." The locket was just a small oval with a crack in the enamel and hope inside. The second test confirmed the first. A meeting was scheduled at the county courthouse, because probate is ceremony as much as it is math. The foundation's lawyers, our clinic lawyer, a judge with an unblinking gaze, and me. The question was no longer if, but how. How to place assets into trusts. How to assign guardianship with fiduciary oversight. How to ensure the child's life stays as normal as a life can when someone says the number $50 million out loud in a room with fluorescent lights that buzz like wasps. "Do you understand what's at stake?" the foundation attorney asked. She was not cruel, only precise. "I understand pancakes on Fridays," I said, "and the blue doors at school, and that my daughter's privacy is not for sale." "Privacy is policy," she murmured, perhaps without meaning the echo. "But institutions are institutions." A cousin appeared, someone from 3 branches over in the family tree, lawyered and polite, offering to take the child for the family. The word family felt like a coat being placed on Lark without asking her size. I smiled a smile that showed my teeth. She has a family, I said. Complications gathered like clouds. We were heading toward a day that would set the shape of our future, and my hands shook so hard I doubled up on coffee just to have something to hold. The hearing was set for a Tuesday at 9 a.m., 90 minutes on the docket, a tight window for the rest of my life. I arranged coverage at work, asked Mrs. Laird to walk the kids to school after breakfast, packed a folder with every document that had ever mattered to our household: birth certificates, adoption papers, medical records, the legal clinic's letterhead standing like a little army. The courthouse smelled like waxed floors and old air. The hallway outside our assigned room had a bench that remembered everyone who had sat on it to learn if their path would bend left or right. My lawyer, Ms. Benton, slid a granola bar across to me. "Eat," she said. "Hypoglycemia is not your friend." "I don't think I can swallow," I said. But I took a bite anyway, and tasted oats and glue, and a small, brave sweetness. Inside, the Foundation's team arranged themselves neatly, laptops like shields. The cousin and his counsel took the other side. The judge, a woman with hair in a low twist, greeted us without ornament. To one side sat a court reporter, to the other, a clerk with a stamp that made a sound like a gavel's echo every time it met paper. "This is an evidentiary hearing with elements of probate and family law," the judge began, like someone reading a recipe that could bake a life. "The decedent, Mr. Emerson Monroe, died intestate as to lineal heirs. A minor child has been identified as his biological descendant. The child was adopted subsequent to placement through state services. At issue today, the creation of an heirship trust, appointment of a guardian ad litem, and clarification of guardianship rights in light of potential challenges." I breathed in for 4, out for 4, counting the way Ms. Patel had taught me on a day when my heart went electric. The cousin's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the family wishes to ensure the child is raised in a manner befitting her status, with access to our family's networks and values." My lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the child's status is first grader. Her networks are her school, her neighbors, her mother and brother. Her values are pancakes on Friday, kindness in the hallway, and the safety of routines. We are here to honor the decedent's estate, but not at the expense of the child's stability." The judge turned to me. "Ms. Alvarez, do you understand the financial provisions being proposed? The heirship trust will be irrevocable. Funds are to be held until the child reaches the age of 25, with allowances for health, education, maintenance, and support. A corporate trustee is named. You would be the guardian for her person, with fiduciary oversight for any distributions made during her minority. Do you comprehend the limits and responsibilities?" I nodded. My mouth was dry. "I understand that no one gets to buy my kid," I said quietly, "and that money is not breakfast." There was a murmur. The judge's mouth twitched like she was swallowing a smile. "That is a clear statement," she said, "but I require clarity on the record. Do you agree to the proposed trust structure?" "I agree if we add 3 protections," I said, and felt my knees steady. 1. No publication of the child's identity before she is 18, including by the Foundation, the trustee, or any family member. 2. A grant for our local school, anonymized, to fund the reading specialist Ms. Patel has wanted for 3 years, because if this is her legacy, it should start with books where she learned to read. 3. A written guarantee that no one removes her from my home without a court order and her consent, unless there is a safety issue documented by the state. My lawyer had prepped me to ask. Still, saying it felt like setting a boundary with a giant. The Foundation attorney tilted her head. "The first and third are consistent with our privacy policy and the best interests of the child," she conceded after a whisper with her colleague. "The second, we can recommend, but the Foundation board must approve." The cousin's lawyer stood again, smooth as new marble. "Your Honor, the family is prepared to offer a summer residence and enrollment in a private academy with—" "No," I said. My voice surprised me. Not loud, but final. "She has a school. She has a brother who waits for her at pickup. She has a mother who knows how she likes her apple slices fanned. Ms. Alvarez," the judge said gently, "please allow counsel to speak on your behalf." I sat, hands shaking, but it was done. The words were out. We moved through exhibits, the DNA results, the adoption decree, the reports from Ms. Patel and Lark's therapist. The guardian ad litem, a man with kind crow's feet, spoke last. The child identifies Ms. Alvarez as my mom, without qualifiers. She exhibits secure attachment behaviors in her care. A sudden change of placement would be harmful. Her best interests are served by confirming guardianship and proceeding with a trust that protects her privacy. The judge recessed for 10 minutes. I stood in the hallway and put my forehead against the cool, painted cinder block, the way you lean on a friend's shoulder. Jada had texted a photo. The grill line, empty for a moment, with a heart drawn in ketchup. Mr. Green had sent a thumbs-up emoji that somehow meant, I am at my window. Say the word. I'll stand guard. Ms. Patel wrote, steady. When we reconvened, the judge read her decision with the pace of someone laying bricks that will hold a roof. Guardianship of the person to me, confirmed. Heirship trust established. Corporate trustee appointed. Distributions limited to health, education, maintenance, support. Guardian ad litem assigned for oversight and annual review. A protective order sealing the minor's identity and limiting public disclosures until she is 18. The foundation directed to consider a community grant in the child's home school district. The court recognizes philanthropy as a means of aligning legacy with lived reality, the judge said, and her gaze softened briefly. The cousin's petition for placement was denied, without prejudice, but with a pointed note. The court will not uproot a thriving child for the comfort of adult narratives. The stamp came down, thwack, and the paper under it changed the shape of our days. Outside, on the courthouse steps, a small knot of media waited. I felt the old fear rise, the fear of being made into content. Ms. Benton stepped in front of me. No comment, she said. Please respect the court's order. I squeezed her hand. Thank you, I whispered. At home, the radiator hissed. The window gathered the late light, and the locket hung on its hook, suddenly heavier with meaning, and yet the same small oval it had always been. I called the kids into the kitchen. Good news, I said, voice trembling. We're a forever that's got paperwork to prove it. Does that mean pancakes? Nico asked, because he is a poet. It means pancakes, I said, because I am a mother. But what did it mean for everything else? Change, when it arrived, wore the face of routine. We did not wake to find silk sheets or a moving truck idling outside like a promise. We woke to cereal bowls, a hunt for one lost shoe, the realization that the bus does not wait even for children whose names were just inked into a trust. The trust meant security, the way a rain barrel means you can water your plants even when the sky is stingy. It did not mean fireworks. The stipend the court approved covered therapy and tutoring, and the kind of dentist who doesn't smell like fear. It meant we caught up on the electricity bill and had a little in savings that wasn't in a jar. The foundation board approved a grant to our school, $75,000 over 3 years for a reading specialist, and a small, quiet room where the walls are painted the color of calm. They did it without Lark's name in the press. The plaque by the door says, for readers, present and future. I stood in that room on a Tuesday afternoon, the light all butter and generosity, and watched a boy sound out a word he had been wrestling for a month. The victory sounded like a laugh caught in a smile. We moved apartments a few months later, not far, just 2 blocks over, to a second-floor unit with a view of the river if you crane. Rent was $1,225, but the landlord salted the stairs without being begged, and the windows sealed. The kids claimed the smaller room because the hallway outside made for better scooter races. I planted basil in a chipped pot on the windowsill and felt extravagant. Mr. Green helped me assemble bunk beds again and hummed while he tightened bolts. Lark kept the locket on its hook. She did not want to wear it every day. It makes my skin remember too much, she said once, and I kissed the top of her head and said, hooks are for safekeeping. Sometimes she would take it down and hold it and say, my story is long. I would say, it is, and we are writing the part we live. We wrote new pages, a library card with her name, a swim lesson where she slid under and came up laughing, the way she learned to tilt the bowl just so to pour pancake batter without bubbles. The cousin mailed a letter once, carefully neutral, offering summer in Maine. We answered with a postcard that said, we summer in Riverbend. There were no more reporters on the steps. The internet's appetite had moved on. I learned that peace is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of a door you can close and know no one will open without your say. We made friends with our new downstairs neighbor, a nurse who traded call nights for early morning drop-offs when I needed to clock in before sunrise. I learned to say yes to help before I was on my knees. Ms. Patel came over once on a Sunday to help us label the new file box. We made tabs. School, health, trust, fun, because you have to file joy somewhere too. She looked around our apartment, the basil, the bunk beds, the locket, and said, "You know what I see? A sturdy life." I breathed the words in like steam. I still take the bus. Sometimes I Uber. I still do the math at the grocery store. But now it includes the brand name cereal once a month. Once we ate strawberries in January just because. I still work at the hospital cafeteria. But now I say no to doubles that steal bedtime. And when my supervisor says, "Policy is policy," I say, "So is the best interest of the child." And we both pretend we aren't measuring each other with rulers we didn't choose. I am still risky in some people's eyes. I am steady in the eyes that matter. On the first anniversary of the court date, we made a cake shaped like a locket, a small oval frosted with a crack drawn in chocolate. We invited Mrs. Laird, Mr. Green, Jada, Ms. Benton and her chipped mug, and Ms. Patel. We stood around our crowded table while the river outside caught sunset and tried not to cry over sugar. Lark cut the first slice and placed it deliberately on a plate that said "Home" in blue letters. "Mine," she said, and then, handing the plate to me, "Ours. If you're still here, if you listened all the way through our small, stubborn story, comment your city and one resource that another mom could use tonight. Subscribe for more true stories and practical scripts. No pity, just tools. If you're counting coins at your kitchen table, if your bus is late in sleet, if you are watching a hook by the door and wondering if it will ever hold more than metal and maybe, this is me telling you. You are allowed to ask for help and to ask for terms. You are allowed to insist on pancakes in privacy. You are allowed to plant basil in a chipped pot and call it a garden. We were 3 before we were heirs. We are 3 still. The river keeps moving. The locket is safe, and Friday is coming.